Welcome back. And the Barrie Colts, they have one more home game to go before the Christmas break. And of course, that is going to be against the Kitchener Rangers Saturday night. So, who better than to have on to talk a bit about the hockey game than the Rangers play by play voice, Mike Farwell, and host of the OHL podcast? Mike, thanks for doing this.
Oh, Mike, it's an absolute pleasure. And you talk about one more home game for the Colts. I'm thinking about one more road game for the Rangers. That's our last date before Christmas.
Yeah, it's always an exciting time of year because the players are obviously excited to get home to see their families, but same thing with broadcasters.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that the trip is about 90 minutes for me. So I'll be home probably before midnight on the Saturday and, can put my feet up and cruise into the Christmas break from there.
Yeah, so it's going to be exciting. And what's really cool is, I grew up a Kitchener Rangers fan, being in the KW area, and I was talking with Jimmy Gilchrist a little while ago because he hit the 3,000 mark for broadcasts, and he brought up Don because he did the 4,000 or over 4,000 calls, and you were one person who actually got to work with him. So I thought I'd like to touch base with you and just get your take on Jimmy's milestone and talk a bit about Don Cameron here.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I could go on forever about both of those gentlemen, and I use the term deliberately. Jimmy Gilchrist is one of the gentlemen of this game for sure, and I've gotten to know him really well over my years in the game. And for him to reach 3,000, just think about it, Mike, and I'm sure you would have gone over it with Jim when you had him on, but there was a 7-year gap where he wasn't calling games. He loses a year to COVID. I mean, the way he's going and not showing any signs of slowing down with those years included, he might push 4,000 himself by the time all is said and done. Obviously, that's not likely to happen now, but Jim and I actually had the chance for years and years because I love the swing through Kingston and Ottawa. I think there are a couple of great markets and great cities. And of course, you're there during hockey season, and Jimmy would pound on me and pound on me. He says, Mike, you got to get up here in the summer. You got to get up here in the summer. I mean, Jimmy, I will, I will. Finally, just this past summer, I did. And it was great. Not only just visiting the city, but visiting with Jimmy outside of the hockey world, right?
Yeah.
And so he invited me into his home. We're having a couple of drinks together. We had dinner. It was fantastic. So, and I've enjoyed that about the OHL generally and getting to know the other guys and gals in the game who have covered this league for either a minute or a lot of minutes like Jimmy. It's just been, it's a great community on the broadcast side and the media side for sure. As for Don, much like you described, I mean, I grew up in Kitchener. I listened to Kitchener Rangers games my entire life. Don Cameron's voice was basically the soundtrack of my youth as a hockey fan. And to think, I never would have guessed that one day I would work alongside him like I did. But what a privilege, what an opportunity it was for me to spend time on the road. And I can tell you that, we'd get into a city after a long road trip, and always, always we had to have a post game or a post trip beverage. And sometimes it was more than one, and we'd go late into the night, and I'd just listen to Don tell stories, and it was it was truly unforgettable stuff. And I learned so much from him. I enjoyed the stories. He's such a gentleman, again, to use the word. And of course, that's away from the games. On the air, the consummate pro, never missed a beat. In fact, we were just reflecting the other night about a night when he was carrying the broadcast equipment up to the booth, and he would have been, I'll bet you he was, if not 70, early 70s, very close. But anyway, let's say
Yeah.
70-ish years old, takes a fall, cuts himself for 14 stitches,
Oh, man.
and still called the game. So that just in a nutshell was Don Cameron. And yes, some way, somehow, he did more than 4,000 games. He was basically the only voice that the Kitchener Rangers franchise knew from its inception in 1963 until Don passed in 2018. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, and he was really genuine too. 'Cause there was a couple years I covered the Kitchener Rangers. That would have been the 2010, 2011 season. We were up in the Sioux, and Steve Spott at the time, a little nervous about me driving home because we had a snowstorm that night. And then I joined you guys for dinner post game, and I just remember sitting there just listening to Don tell the stories and just how genuine and just how passionate he was about junior hockey.
That shows how smart a man you are, Mike. When you get an audience with Don, you just listen, right? And
Exactly.
Yeah, and he's always happy to tell those stories, and he was always thinking of others and expressing that concern. And yeah, just an absolute gem. I miss him to this day. I still work in the occasional Don Cameronism with appropriate credit given to him as one of his lines, but I'll throw them in on the broadcast every once in a while just because. I mean, his name remains synonymous with the organization.
And since you do travel with the Kitchener Rangers and you're around the team on both home and away, you probably have a better answer as to what's going on with Kitchener this year, because a lot of people were thinking maybe the Rangers are a bubble team for the playoffs, but here we are coming into Christmas and sitting top spot in the league. So what's going on in Kitchener?
I wish I could tell you, Mike. I mean, I love the way you set that up and the credit you give me for this. I haven't a clue. I'm the same as everybody else. Starting this season, you look at the number of players that the Rangers graduated, 10. Their top six forwards graduated. Everybody, I think, maybe not internally, but I don't know, but would have expected that this team takes a step back, begins the rebuild. There's already talk in this community and a fair bit of it about 2027,
Mhm.
building towards a Memorial Cup. And Kitchener, as we understand it already at this early stage, would like to be a bidder for that 27 Memorial Cup when it's back in the Ontario League. So that was the feeling coming into the season. And I'll cop to my own predictions. I picked the Rangers to finish eighth. And I said in doing so that the only reason I was doing that is because I'm a homer and I didn't want to
Yeah.
pick them to miss the playoffs. So that's kind of where I thought they would be. And as you said, here they are running tops in the league and just playing such consistent hockey. It's been
Mhm.
a lot of fun to watch, and I'd point to two things. It's a completely different philosophy from the coaching staff. Three brand new voices and faces behind that bench, and I think that's made an impact for sure. And I'll attribute the other portion of it to culture. There's been a real change, I believe, I feel, in the culture around this team, their approach to work, their approach to practices, et cetera, which maybe just ties into coaching itself. But those are the two things that I would point at as reasons that somehow the Kitchener Rangers still sit in first place as we head into Christmas.
And then you touched on the coaching staff because you bring in a Hokus who's from Finland, and there was a lot of people wondering how's the European style going to translate to North America. But it seems like the players right now buying into the systems, and everything seems to be going fine with that.
Yeah, and now the big question is for how long will they be able to keep UC Ahokas in Kitchener? Because he made it clear, and we understand that this foothold in North America is his stepping stone to what he hopes to be a professional career in the National Hockey League, right? So with so much success so early, oh my gosh, a lot of fans are worried that it's a one and done sort of thing for UC Ahokas, one season and he's off to the pros. I don't know that I'd go that far, but one of the other things, yeah, you talk about buying into the system. I think we have a bunch of players here in Kitchener right now who played secondary, second fiddle kind of roles, supporting roles last year, and are now getting the chance to be the guys in the top six, et cetera. They're responding to that very well. And the other thing, forget systems. The other thing about UC Ahokas that I learned early on is that he demands accountability. He is a
Mhm.
hockey coach and he doesn't care about your feelings. The point is to win games and to make you a better player and person. So he very much stresses accountability, and I think the players have gotten used to that pretty quick, and they know that if they go out for a shift or two and don't perform as expected, they might miss the next shift or two.
Yeah, and with it being teenagers, you just never know what you're going to get. So if you can get that into them early, you get these good results.
Yeah, he UC refers to them as young boys all the time, which is a phrase that I've really come to appreciate from him. And he recognizes that with these young boys, there will be mistakes, but his entire focus is on the process. Here's what you need to do. We're going to practice it. We're going to get it into your head, and then you're going to do it as often as possible. So the repetition in that and making the right plays. And yes, you won't always do it, but they're doing it on a fairly consistent basis for sure.
And this will be the second meeting of the season between the Colts and the Rangers on Saturday. The first game back at the odd, a little lopsided. So coming into this one, this almost feels like it could be a bit of a trap game for Kitchener. So you're playing Sault Ste. Marie Friday night, who chasing Kitchener for top spot in the West, and then you come to Barrie, you got the Christmas break. So I'm sure for Hocus and the coaching staff, it's going to be getting that message across that you can't take anybody lightly in this league.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that Christmas break earlier when we started this conversation, Mike, because as much as we look forward to it, we know the players look forward to it. And I've seen some games, especially on the Sundays before the Christmas break in this league over the years, that it's like everybody on the ice, both teams are just going through the motions. So, yeah, it's a big game to keep the players focused on both teams. What I'll say about that for the Rangers, and I don't disagree one bit. It's a big game on Friday, obviously, with the team that's next closest to Kitchener in the West. So all the trappings of a trap on Saturday, right? The Eastern Conference opponent, the last game before Christmas. If it's one thing that I've seen from this team this year, and again, I'll use the word consistency, but when there has been a test, and we've talked about several tests through the year, the Rangers win their first 3 games, then they lose back-to-back games. Oh, okay. So are we starting to see the real team? Nope. Then they string together a few more wins. Then they're coming into their first 3-3 of the season. Then they're coming into a weekend where they're facing North Bay and London, 2 big teams, and so on. I could keep listing off 4 or 5 different quote unquote tests that we've talked about through this year. And every time we talk about one, the team seems to respond to it and respond to it pretty darn well. So, yep, possibility of a trap game. Maybe it turns out that their heads just aren't in it, but I get the sense, based on what I've seen through the first 32 games coming into this weekend, that we'll see a prepared Rangers team that still plays a pretty good brand of hockey.
Well, either way, it's going to be exciting. I'm always excited when Kitchener comes to town. I always mark it on my calendar. So thanks for doing this, and it'll be great to see you in person on Saturday.
Mike, it's always my pleasure. I love what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in person too. Can't wait.
So that's Mike Farwell, the radio play-by-play voice of the Kitchener Rangers and the OHL podcast host. So if you ever get a chance to check out the OHL podcast, it is on YouTube, and they always have some good conversations and good interviews. So definitely worth a watch. So again, thanks to Mike for doing that, and it's going to be fun to see what team shows up on Saturday for the Kitchener Rangers. Expect it to be a pretty fast-paced game. Obviously, the Barrie Colts still dealing with some key injuries with Jacob Frasca and Bo Akey out. Now you add Sam Hillebrandt, who's off with Team USA, and Edward Chalet, who's with Team Czechia for the World Junior. So a bit of a depleted lineup for the Barrie Colts, but Kitchener Rangers are going to be also missing a couple of players with Carson Rakoff and Philippe Machard. But either way, it's going to be a fun weekend, and cannot wait for it. And just so you know, the Barrie Colts, they are in Brantford Friday night for their very first trip to the Civic Center. I plan to be there, and I'll have a recap video after the game with my thoughts on the game in Brantford, and also first take on the arena, because I haven't been to the Brantford Civic Center as of yet. So expect that video coming up Friday night, and then the Barrie Colts will take on the Kitchener Rangers Saturday at 7:30, and you can catch that game on Rogers TV, and then I'll have a recap video after the game. So again, thanks for tuning in. Put your comments down below, your thoughts on the upcoming game, your thoughts on the Kitchener Rangers, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.